Chapter 3, Escape. Petrel bowed and then asked, "Should I keep going?" "Yes," came the shout from the audience. "Why not?" asked Bill. "I'm addicted." "Me too," said Solo. Petrel nodded, looking pleased. "I do apologise for being such a grumpy character in this story," she said. "You had every right to be," said Bill. "Isla and the Overlord were beyond cruel. You needed to look out for your friends and your little sister, not to mention yourself." "Yes!" shouted everyone. Petrel smiled. Bill and Solo could see her eyes had filled with tears, but she composed herself. "Could I ask a question?" asked Frank, who was sitting in the front row next to Ben. "Of course," said Petrel. "Would you like to say who you are?" Yeah," said Frank. "My name is Frank, but most people know me as the Frankster." Ben, Minnow, and Sky cheered. Frank laughed. "So what I wanted to ask is, where are Squid and your other friends now?" Petrel grinned. "Can we wait until the end?" asked Petrel. "I don't want to spoil the story." Frank nodded. "Oh, of course," he said. "Sorry." "Not at all," said Petrel. "Any more questions?" Mouse put up her hand. "Yes," asked Petrel, "and what is your name?" "Mouse," said Mouse. "And I don't really have a question, but I wanted to say how happy I am that the story has a character who's in a wheelchair." Everyone roared with approval. "And not just one character," shouted Magal. "Just you wait and see, young Mouse." "And they're not just characters," said Petrel. "This story is based totally on real life." Mouse beamed at Magal and Petrel. "Read on," shouted Magal. "Are you ready?" asked Petrel, looking excited. "Yes!" shouted everyone. Petrel began reading. 3. Escape. "We all escaped at the same time," said Dodger, looking at Petrel to see if she was angry with him for talking about it. Petrel nodded and then closed her eyes. "Go on," she said. "Tell them." Well, as Petrel said, Isla doesn't only run the factory, she runs a cleaning business too. So when we cleaned, we had to steal for her, bring her back little gifts, said Dodger. Petrel opened her eyes, looking angry again. "More than the factory work, more than the long hours of cleaning, cooking and washing, what I hated most was having to steal from people," she said. "Our parents always taught us that stealing was wrong, but Isla said that the people we cleaned for owed her a lot of money. She was forever moaning about how greedy they were, accepting her kindness without offering them anything in return." Bullant nodded. "She was so mean. She'd say to us, 'Sometimes we just have to help ourselves a little,' and then she'd ask us to hand over the little gifts we'd taken while cleaning." "Such a hypocrite," said Dodger. "She'd always go to church on Sundays, and then she'd say, 'One day you'll realise that even though stealing is wrong, helping yourself is never a bad thing.'" "Oh, her little words of wisdom," said Petrel. "I hated them." "So how did you get away?" asked Solo. Petrel looked proud. "One day I realised that one of the people I was cleaning for had a secret passage under their house. It led away from their place and connected into the city's networks of tunnels. I planned the escape for weeks, and I couldn't tell Squid. Sorry, Squid. I was scared that you might accidentally tell someone." Squid gazed up at her sister and said, "That's okay." "Well, I might have told someone," said Squid, "accidentally." "I told Bullant and Nose, so they were on it. We made a disaster happen at the house." "What was it?" asked Solo, intrigued. "I let the bath overflow and flood two of the rooms, and the kitchen sink as well," said Petrel. "I said that the woman had done it, but we urgently needed a team to go back and repair it. It was just sheer luck that they even allowed the four of us to go together. But they were upset that day. Something else had gone wrong. They were really angry about that, whatever it was. So they drove us to the flooded house and told us to be quick. One of them told us to make sure we found some extra gifts for Isla, said Nose. We said we would, and we acted like we were really frightened of them. So brave, said Toll. I know, said Dodger. I can't believe they escaped. You weren't with them? Asked Toll. No, my story is different, said Dodger. Petrel sighed. Do you want to hear the rest? Yes, said Toll. Of course. Sorry. As soon as we were inside, we turned on some more taps, and then we went straight to the cellar, said Petrel, and followed the tunnel out of the place. I knew it fed into these tunnels, and we just went as fast as we could. I'd explored the best way for a while when I was planning the escape. Wow, said Toll, and you didn't even have a light. I always took a candle. The woman who owned the house had dinner candles in good supply. And to throw the searchers off track, said Bulland, we slung a rope of torn and tied sheets over the northern wall of the house. That made it seem as if we'd all escaped that way. We even left one of Squid's old shoes on the ground to make it look as if she'd lost it. Luckily it was raining, so we didn't have to make any footprints in the dirt. Not luckily it was raining, said Petrel. I waited for a rainy day before I caused the disaster. Anyway, said Bulland, we hadn't told anyone else at the factory how we planned to escape, so everyone was convinced that we'd escaped over the wall. How do you know? Asked Solo. My dad, said Dodger. He heard on the grapevine that some kids had escaped. Petrel looked sad. Your dad is a champion, she said. Soon after we escaped, we met him at a secret underground meeting place. He gave us food, said Squid, looking proud to add something to the story. Dodger was always with him, so we got to know him a bit, said Nose. We were all envious of him, said Petrel. I wasn't, said Nose. You were, said Petrel. Why? Asked Dodger. You were still living with your dad, said Bulland, and our parents had been taken. Nose nodded, looking sheepish. Sorry, Dodge, he said. I was a bit jealous. Dodger hung his head and started to cry. And now they've taken Dodger's dad, said Petrel.